Okay, so we're going to be looking at the sky. Now, with this next colour, we are going to be implementing a bit more of the black. We are going to strengthen the colour from previous tones, but also what we're going to do is we're going to articulate the clouds a little bit more on the tops, and you can actually see the bumps of the clouds a little bit more on the top as opposed to the bottom. I think the bottom are some of the darker tones we've got in there already. I think you can see this one, we can articulate that later. But I think because we're going brighter, we're just going to get that. So what I've done, I've added the magenta, blue, let's get lots of that in there. So keep adding the magenta because that is kind of our main colour, I think, with this painting. I think it's purple, but it's leaning more to a magenta purple. We're pushing that blue further and further back, the original blue. So you notice that's like a dull pink there, but it's still getting brighter and more saturated. So you're kind of slightly creeping forward each time. You're not making any sudden movements. And they go like, this looks really sharp at the moment because none of the other colours are in. But once those other slightly sharper colours are coming in on the water and all that, and the rocks coming in here, that's going to be pushed back and look a bit more realistic. So yeah, so this lighter colour here, for example, look, on those clouds on the sky there. I might use a thinner brush. So the tops of the clouds, just again getting that bumpiness, and only going in those sort of brighter, sort of greyish cloud areas. We're using that pink tone instead. For example, this is a really good one in the top right hand corner. You can actually see the actual bumpiness really clearly. And again, you're going to scumble across, that blends a little bit into that previous grey. We will get a mid-tone in between this. That's going to be later, but we're just going to be coming in to that bumpiness at the top, pushing in. So it's really quite strong. You see it already. That's working nicely with that horizon pink, and I think these pinks are going to be used down here as well, slightly later on. So let's carry on here, pushing in. There's some pushing to the right, pushing away from that. And we've got one over here. Now the one behind is not as, the one lower down is not as bright, so notice I'm using less paint, I'm scumbling more, so it's appearing duller on the canvas, which is what I want, and it looks like it's further in the distance. Out of those two, that looks closer to us because it's stronger, it's more vibrant. Again, I'm making a mental note of every time something looks a little bit more grey, a little bit more dull, I'm wiping off the paint, the excess paint, and I'm applying less, so it's appearing more grey. I'm still using the exact same colour, it's just using it a different way. And then we're going to come across here, scumbling again. It's more of a greyish, kind of lighter colour under that main cloud, which is this big heavy one. And we're just articulating the edges a little bit more. And that one. Pushing. And I sometimes like to that's already dry, but I think sometimes I like to scrape in and then rework areas to give it some energy, and again building texture, which is good. Adds nuance and sort of idiosyncrasies to the painting and makes it interesting. And whenever you look at good artwork, reasonably good artwork, or great art of course, you see lots of nuances and certain changes the artist made within the composition as they go. I think you can do the same thing. Not everything is a process so regimented like this. Sometimes, for example, that, or scratch in a little bit and do a different effect to create that grey. The thicker the paint, the better the effect, obviously. And then we're going to scumble across here and then create those lighter tones on the left there, or that cloud. But yeah, just have fun with it, really. I mean, in previous videos where I talked about texture, I think you can talk about making marks with palette knives, obviously screwdrivers, pencils. If you do mixed media, you can maybe use a pastel or something like that to create some outlines. I might do that in later stage tutorials, but to keep it nice and simple, just 4 colours, a canvas, a simple composition, a seascape, which is reasonably liked by most people. I think it's easy to see colour changes on a seascape, and you've only got that definitive horizon line. Okay, so on the left hand side we've got another bumpy one going right up here, and then that's creeping to the left. And there's another one echoing on the left hand side. Again, it doesn't have to be exactly right. I mean, let's look. I mean, I've actually come over too far on that one, but it doesn't matter because it's the sky. It doesn't necessarily need to be exactly right in relation to the land. Unless it drastically hinders the composition, which is not. So keep in mind, this is one of the brightest tones of the clouds. We might go brighter eventually, but this is one of the brightest. As I said, we want to get straight to those more pungent colours and then do touch-ups later on. And again, I would be spending a hell of a lot more time on this naturally and adding more colours and maybe palette knife and thickening the texture, but I think for the case of the tutorial, just keep it simple. I think we're just going to use the brush, 4 colours, and just a couple of techniques to use when doing the landscape. Again, notice I'm changing my wrist action as well, like that one's coming down. So that sort of scumbling line coming down here, which is more of a faded grey. That's coming diagonally from this cloud here. Yeah. Keep wiping your brush off at the end of the palette, your plate, or whatever you're using. You should have something that looks like that. And again, we're going to do lots of these diagonal pinks coming in here. I would say just go over that lamppost a little bit. Don't try and paint round it, because that's very easy to just go over again with the black later on. But this is quite important, this last little bit of the clouds on the left hand side, is because we've got this kind of diagonal formation of a couple of diagonal sharper points of the clouds, and that actually brings our eye the composition to the tree, which is the focal point. So it's very important actually this section of the clouds to get a bit more accurate. I don't think all the others are as important. I think this one, again, go a bit darker with this, and then go diagonally in like that, and then another one probably about there, and another one under there, and that's actually going to link up to these lighter clouds in the distance just above the trees there, and that's actually going to link to that last pink we applied in the last video. across. Nice. Now, you don't have to scumble as much as this. You can actually mix grayer pinks and have it, you know, merging with the paint a slightly different way, but I'm doing it like this because it's quicker, it's easier to follow, I believe. If I'm mixing out 50 different colours, I think it'd be hard to follow. And what's nice is scumbling when you're building up that texture. It is fading nicely into that original purple, and then the original pink we added, and we can start adding those clouds in the distance there with this pink, just again like that, these clouds in the distance. So everything's looking a lot more lively up in the sky now, which is good. Let's get that last cloud over here, articulate the top of that edge there. And when coming to do this colour, maybe mix a little bit more paint, just a little bit more than normal, because you are using it quite a bit in the sky. Mix the ratio exactly the same, just more quantity. My students sometimes struggle with quantity of paint when mixing colours. They just add a little bit. I mean, admittedly, I haven't added maybe as much as I should have. That's why I happen to keep mix more, but that's why I like to be really accurate. But when you just have an idea how much you need for a certain area, just have an idea and then mix that amount, so it makes life easier for you. Okay. And we've got one last one here, it's like a slightly bumpy one. Okay, I think we're going to leave it there on this video. So again, very simple, just the top edges of the cloud, articulating the kind of more sort of detailed clouds, you can see it, and then those ones that are looking a little bit more vague, a little bit more ambiguous, you scumble and you use the brush slightly a different way, you press more down like that. And then as we go into the distance, so coming further down as the clouds are going to the distance, you're using less paint each time and you're scumbling, you know. But yeah, and then we can use lots of those lighter clouds there. And we will probably be going over some of the darker ones again in the distance, just to bring them out. But yeah, in the next video we'll probably be looking at the water, more intense colours, and in the sand, of course, and then we'll be going to those last stages of the composition. All right.